say some of those sessions were very interesting at the very beginning because it was really critical to get the scope of what we were trying to do. And if you're really having, as Chief says all the time, courageous conversations, you say things that people don't necessarily agree with. But again, I think when you have those blunt conversations, you get to a product that you see today. It's not perfect. I want to remind everybody, it's a preliminary study. We still have to do final engineering on this. But it's really, again, everybody's excitement is palpable, and I think after the community sees this, they'll see why. Again, I'd like to introduce Mr. Sewell. Please come up, Steve. And I would respectfully ask if there's not anything not urgent, allow him to finish his presentation, because I think he's going to scratch all those itches as part of the presentation. And if he doesn't, then we'll have plenty of time for questions. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Sewell.
I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. Not that there's any pressure on me now. That I've heard all these great things that you all have talked about, and now you get an engineering presentation here that's, I hope, delivers what you all are excited about, and what I'm excited about. I will say, I think I've told several folks here how excited I am about where we've gotten to with this concept. So I'll talk a little bit about what our study involved. What we did was we took and looked at what the existing conditions are out there today. We looked at traffic volumes, we did traffic counts, we did travel time studies of how long it takes to drive Winchester and Greenup today. That would be used to compare with this concept that we're looking at. We also looked at crash analysis. I know you all have had some fatalities with pedestrians here. There's been numerous wrecks at some of the intersections. So we looked at that information. And then we took all that data, looked at traffic simulations, all this existing data that we do as engineers, and we took that and developed a solution that we felt, multiple solutions that we felt were would improve the downtown and met the goals that you all needed. So one thing I will talk about is what was the objective of the study. The big thing is we wanted to reduce Winchester Avenue from 4 lanes to 2 lanes between 13th and 18th. That was the goal. And this mission statement study objectives kind of came out of our stakeholders, everybody talking. KYTC was involved in this, KYOVA was involved. And we wanted to also not impede the flow of traffic in downtown. We still wanted people to be able to get to where they're going, but at a slower, more traffic calming, improve the safety of the downtown area. We also wanted to increase the walkability of the downtown, and which would help with revitalization of the businesses, and then also increase tourism. So this is where we are today. I'm not going to say this won't morph over time, but I think it covers the objectives that you all were looking at. So with that, parking was a big consideration. How much parking is there out there today? How much is being used? And how much could we increase it, or how much would it stay the same? I mean, would it stay? We want to make sure we at least maintain what we have. So you'll see that there's 3 different levels here. So we counted, ultimately in this study area, we have about 800 parking spaces, 799 to be exact. But you'll notice that there's 3 different colors there. There's a green, there's an orange, and there's a red. And those relate to the different ratios of what is there versus what is occupied during a normal business day. We did it from a noon to 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, I guess, time frame. And you'll notice that there's definitely a central location of where parking is being 100% used, or mostly used. And then on the outskirts you have the green, which is not being as utilized as heavy as in certain areas. So, but of that, we had right at 200 parking spots that were used. Now I will say that we did include a parking garage down in the back corner there on the bottom of the thing that has roughly about 419 spots. That today it is private, but we did include that in our study, and only 29 of those were being used, so it wasn't a lot being used there. But that was something we did include. So with that, with the existing data we gathered, we developed 2 options, 2 alternatives, I'll call them. Alternative 1, reduce it to 2 lanes. It had 14-foot driving lanes. It had pull-in angle parking, which is more like what you see in a typical in some downtowns, you just pull into the spot and then you back out when you're ready to leave. And then one of the things we wanted to also do was increase a bicycle lane through here. Now, with the limitations of doing parking, the angled parking on each side, we weren't able to get a bike lane in each direction, but we used a sharrow, which basically the bikers would have the same rights as a car would in the lane. They would just drive down they would ride down the road just like a car would. And then we maintained signalized intersections at 13th through 18th, just like you had today. That wouldn't change. It would be exactly the same. So with that, we did have to look at 13th of adding a right turn lane. Just with the number of people going across the bridge, that was something that had to be added. As I mentioned, signals at each intersection. We were able to increase the parking with pull-in spaces. Not a lot, but we were able to do that. We did have bulb outs at the intersections, which will reduce the amount of time that it takes for a pedestrian to cross the road. That will provide a safety benefit there. And we did look at a mid-block crossing on this alternative also. That was between 15th and 16th, I think, if I had that right. So I know this map is hard to see, but alternative one, that's kind of a conceptual alternative of what the corridor would look like. Now this is kind of a simulation that shows what it looks like. You'll notice the bus pull off at front of the theater. You'll see the angled parking. You'll see the shortened where the bulb outs are at the intersections so that you have the short pedestrian crossing. As we go down, there's the mid-block crossing that we looked at between 15th and 16th. The new configuration on 16th there, and as you get down to 17th and on down to 18th. This is just kind of a rendering of what you would see with alternative one. As we go to alternative two, I will say I was a little bit nervous about proposing this at one of our meetings, but I did feel pretty strongly that it would work. Alternative two also provides 2 lanes in each direction, 1 lane in each direction, 2 lanes total. The lane widths are a little bit narrower than with the other one because of the raised median in the middle. Now this one has back-end parking, which is essentially the same thing as parallel parking, but easier. What you do is you give your signal. As you come up to your space that you want to back into, you pull past the space, and then just like with parallel parking, you back into that spot, but you're not having to worry about how close you get to the curb. You're just backing into the spot. And with most cars have cameras today, it's relatively easy. But the benefits of this are when you go to leave, all you're doing is looking to your left. If there's not a car coming, you're pulling out. You're not having to worry about back out into traffic, some car coming down through there. It's just like leaving a spot, your parking space. There's also benefits for the businesses of when you're backing in. If you go to the store, you want to buy something, you're going to put it in your trunk. You come out, there's your trunk. It's right at the sidewalk. You're not walking out into traffic trying to get out and load your car and worry about a car coming by and side swapping you or something like that. There's another aspect of this one in that we implemented roundabouts, many roundabouts at the signalized intersections. With that, this is kind of a rendering of that. They would have a 50-foot circle from outside to outside. You would have a 15-foot lane for the cars to drive around. The median in the middle is mountable. So if you have delivery trucks and trucks want to come up and turn left, he can still do that. He goes up, he drives through the roundabout. His trailer can go up over the median. A car, you wouldn't want to do it in a car, but if a bigger truck can go up on that. So we put those at each one of the signalized intersections except for 16th Avenue. The same thing with this one. You have the right turn lane up at 13th. 16th goes to a stop controlled with alternative 2, that the side streets would stop, but Winchester Avenue would still be able to free flow. We also have the pedestrian safety of the bulb outs there. And we had the mid-block crossing in alternative 2 also. So like I said, this is hard to see. We can blow this up if everybody wants to zoom in on an alternative, but this is the same rendering that you see, what it would look like with the mini roundabouts at the intersection and the raised median and the back end parking on this concept. One other concept or benefit of safety for a door opening, and it came up in one of our conversations, is if you have small kids, when you open your doors, a lot of times if you're pulling in, you open the door and the kids can just, if your kids are like my kids, they just run. But with so the doors would open and the kids would be able to go out into traffic. With this one, you would open your door and the doors would actually act as a barricade to go into traffic. They would have to go toward the sidewalk. So there is another safety benefit of that for parents with smaller kids, and it's just an added safety benefit. So we had our discussions internally. We came up with, as part of the study, we wanted to come up with a preferred alternative. So naturally, we call it Alternative 3. Alternative 3 is very, very similar to Alternative 2. There is just minor differences to it.
I'm no Vanna White, as you can tell. Your job is safe.
So with Alternative 3, what I want to show you is there's really two separate areas that are different. This is one up at between 13th and 14th. What we have done is we've added parking, it's parallel parking across from the theater there.
Thank you.
Along the hotel, or not the hotel, in front of the hotel there, where there's existing parallel parking today. And the other thing we have done is we've taken 14th Street and we've converted it back to two-way. And we've put parallel parking on there rather than pull-in parking like there is today. And the reason that is when we started looking at traffic volumes, there is a lot of traffic in the afternoon that comes up Winchester Avenue, hops over, and gets on the bridge to go across the bridge. So having that with the through traffic using Greenup, moving over to Greenup and using it more as the through area rather than going down Winchester, which the volumes, the models and everything don't show that changing a whole lot. But if you want to get through the area, this would be a way that you could get up to the bridge. You would be able to come up 14th Street and go across the bridge. And you would also be able to, if you're coming off the bridge and coming into downtown, you could use that as a way to get down to Greenup too. So we felt pretty strongly that would, for efficiencies of moving traffic in the area, it would be a benefit to convert that back to two-way. The other area on Alternative 3 is at 16th Avenue, or 16th Street there. So 16th Street was very difficult. We tried to find a way to put a roundabout in there. I mean, I tried hard, I promise. And but with the new improvements that you all have made there, we didn't feel that taking that out and putting that under construction again was a good thing. So we made it stop controlled in Alternative 2. There was some concerns about safety and would people be crossing across Winchester Avenue, even though it's just 2 lanes instead of 4 now, would that be a safe route to do? So with this option, we have closed that median. So if you're coming up 16th Avenue from Greenup and you wanted to go straight through, you would make a right, go down to the roundabout, and come back up to 16th. Same thing if you were on Winchester Avenue and you wanted to turn left to go down to Greenup on 16th, you would go down to 17th in the roundabout, go all the way around the roundabout and come back to 16th. This is something that we can obviously discuss and it can be refined as we move into final design. This was just a way of another option that we wanted to present and to try to make this as safe, area safe, and keep traffic flow moving. So from a traffic analysis standpoint, I'll hit this really quick. Level service is the same thing as like in your grades in school. A is good, F is bad, C is average. It's kind of what our goal is as engineers, as we try to keep everything as a C or better. Everything in the downtown area today is an A or a B, except for when you get up to the bridge at that crossing, and you do get some ease there, which everybody's setting that traffic and understands that this project doesn't do anything to fix that. I will say that. This is totally separate. Although I would be glad to help you all fix it at any time. So when we we reduce it down from 4 lanes down to 2, and we compare the two alternatives, the signalized intersections, you'll notice there that there is a D at that intersection, but with the roundabouts, everything is an A, B, or C. So there is, and that D is because there's a pretty significant volume of cars that come up that way, and keeping traffic moving on Winchester Avenue and the side streets have to wait. So it's not anything that can't be fixed with either option, but the roundabouts do keep traffic continuously flowing. So from a level service standpoint, everything is good with either option that we want to go with. From a volume to capacity is like based on up to a 1, and typically if you're only halfway, this chart just kind of shows that everything we have is below half of what it could handle at a maximum situation. So traffic, it just reiterates that traffic is not a problem with what we have. Now, we have 2 simulations here. These are the PM. This is in the afternoon. We did traffic counts in the morning and traffic counts in the afternoon. And the PM was by far the busiest. What you'll see here is the PM starting at the where the split is at the northern intersection coming down. We'll go to the bridge in just a minute. You'll see the congestion there. And then it shows the alternative, the 2 alternatives and how traffic would flow in the downtown area with these proposed changes. There's the bridge location at 12th and 13th. You'll see the cars do queue up to turn left onto the bridge. It queues back through. It should show you queuing back through 12th Avenue. And then with the signalized, this is the signalized alternative. You'll notice that cars are having to sit and wait. So if you're on a side street, you're sitting there waiting for the to get the green light. There's not a whole lot of queuing. It's just a matter of you're sitting there waiting. As we come down through 16th there and 17th, and then it'll spin around. And but you still see that reducing it down to 2 lanes is not going to cause traffic congestion in the area, which was the important thing that the Transportation Cabinet wanted to make sure of. And you'll see green up over there on the right side of the screen there. And as we pan back up the corridor, it'll give you it gives you a visualization of what traffic would look like. And these are traffic volumes 20 years in the future. I will say with the growth rate and everything, I know that historically the volumes have stayed relatively the same in over time. So that is something that we did use here. I think as you're all talking about today, with the revitalization, hopefully those volumes increase, but there's still plenty of capacity. Even if you doubled traffic for 20 years in the future, it would still work.
Just one point to reiterate, we'll wait to Ken to talk the question. Those cars moving on that simulation, that is real data.
That is real data.
Measured by
That is data. We collected the traffic counts in the field. We put those into here, and yes, that's real. Those volumes are real-time volumes. Now, I will say they were collected during COVID as part of this, but one of the things we did was we actually put we gathered volumes for the whole day, or whole week actually, and we compared the daily volumes to what last year and 2 years before had been, and there was a little drop, but at that time, a lot of the traffic had returned to, we did wait a little bit until things kind of returned to normal. So, I think, let me make sure I went to yeah. All right, so here is alternative 2. Same simulation, same times. All this area up here on 9th and 10th, this area, nothing changes. It's all the same. I think the exciting thing is when we get down to just past the bridge and you see the roundabouts and how traffic is flowing and how you're not sitting there waiting for the light to turn green. As we go through, you'll still see that there is a backup from the bridge at this area. Yeah, so there's the bridge, 12th and 13th. And then you have the roundabout at 14th and 15th that show up there. You'll see this one leaves 16th open. It does keep that median open there on this alternative. But you'll notice there's on the side streets there's nobody waiting. If we could zoom in a little bit, you would see the cars pull up and just yield for a second and then go. And then it will pan around and go back up just like the other one did. But with this alternative, essentially nobody is stopping. Everybody is continuously flowing through the corridor. So the big question that everybody asks is, what is the cost? And what you'll see is that alternative 1 is slightly cheaper than alternative 2 and 3. Alternative 1 is, I think, 2.5, roughly $2.9 million if you add right-of-way and utilities in there and design. The total cost of the project would be right at 2.9. And with alternative 2 and 3, you're at 3.5. So it is a little bit more expensive, and that's due to, with the alternative 1, you're not replacing the signals. There's not as much work there to do. Utilities, I mean, there's a little bit of impact with utilities, and the design is essentially the same, but there is no right-of-way with these alternatives. Where do we go in the future? I put these in here as kind of some steps of where to go. The final report has been completed. It's been submitted to the KTC. It's been approved. So the next step would be either doing an encroachment permit with the Transportation Cabinet, doing an MOA with the Transportation Cabinet, and obtaining the funding. We have discussed numerous funding opportunities with this through the Transportation Cabinet, through KYOVA, through your all's local funds also. And then to do the design plans, and then get to a construction bidding, and then the exciting part of seeing it built.
I want to ask, this might sound silly, but are the centers of those circles raised? People will be able to drive straight through them, right?
No, they are raised.
Okay.
Now, they're raised about, typically your curb if you're driving down the side of the road is about 6 inches. You know, they're vertical curbs. These would be at an angle, and they would raise, you can do anywhere between 4 and 6 inches. So they're raised enough that if a car drove across them, you wouldn't want to do it. But if a truck wants to track up on, like if a big truck with a trailer is going up on it, it would be able to go up on it and go around.
Steve, can you also mention the air quality impact of roundabouts versus stop signs?
Right. So we didn't do a full air quality analysis as part of this study, but all research and everything shows that with cars continuously moving, not sitting there, not exhaust fumes going in one spot, that air quality would improve with the roundabout option over the signalized intersection. So that is, I know you all have to maintain your attainment and all that. So there is a benefit for the roundabout and alternative 3 from an air quality standpoint, which is important for downtown with people walking through the area. And did I miss anything, Michael, Steve?
Covered it. I had one.
I did want to add a couple, well, at least one other thing. Simultaneously looking at this, and again, very cautiously optimistic, Mayor, Commissioners, and to the community about funding on this, and I alluded to the fact that some of the initial meetings with KYTC were interesting. They were interesting because KYTC gets paid to move traffic, and they've got something here, as Steve said, that they rate very highly on that. So we understand their desire to do that, and I think there was some cross-body language at those first meetings. But I think when they looked at the data, like Commissioner Bland is talking about, I think it's something that we knew intuitively, or people that have lived here, you know the power of Greenup Avenue as a true, bypass, and also the fact that Carter is no slouch itself when it comes to moving traffic. So anyway, looking at this, Finance has been working diligently on the budget for 2022. We're giving them a lot of moving targets to consider and deal with, a lot of other moving factors, ARPA money, et cetera. But tentatively right now, we also intend to tackle the streetscape from 13th to 18th Street. So we've got blotches down there of excellence with the streetscape that's been done, 12th to 13th Street. Imagine that the rest of the way down Winchester. So if you get in front of the Highlands and the old museum, the new AP building, you still see the old silver Cobra head lights. Those were replaced by the acorn lights. That drops the electrical lines into the ground like we've done in the other portions, and then some of the other accoutrements, the benches, the trash cans. So it really pulls that all together into a cohesive picture downtown that looks as nice as what we've done between 12th and 13th Street. So again, there's a lot of moving parts on this right now. To emphasize, it is preliminary and we'll have to go to final engineering. But because KYTC, they're not as concerned about the economic impact, they're concerned about moving traffic. And when they saw the safety parameters that Steve hit, they got pretty amped up. And they're pretty excited about trying to help us with funding. Again, no promises, but we're very optimistic about getting a large percentage of this funding. I will say that the guy who runs the Transportation Cabinet's safety program, highway safety program that they have, he got real excited about this. He actually called it the trifecta, I think was the word he used, because he has been looking for a corridor where he can implement the mini roundabouts, the back end parking, and do a road diet, which a road diet is taking 4 lanes down. A lot of times you see it go down to 3 with like a turn lane in the middle, 1 lane each direction. We wouldn't have that here, but to go from 4 down to 2 and implement the other 2 things with it, he has discussed that he would like to see this as even a pilot project for the entire state, something that they would be able to, people would come here to look at implementing. So he got a little too excited about it, which I was good with. So another thing on the roundabouts and the conversations that the elected officials had on a preview of this and other people that have been privy is, we all have a scene of Chevy Chase and vacation in Europe and not being able to get off the roundabout. And I think we've all had experiences with that. One of my sons lives in North Carolina, and they've got a multi-lane roundabout that can be very confusing. As Steve has educated us, this is a mini roundabout. It's 1 lane. It's very intuitive. When you think about single lane roundabouts versus multi-lane, it's much more intuitive and less threatening, I think. Yeah, and I will say that they are relatively new to the state. There is one getting under construction right now over in Moorhead in Rowan County. And there's 2 other ones that are under construction right now in the city of E-Town. And they are looking at actually doing 13 total. So they, I think they're going to get the first 2. And so there will be a preview that we'll able to look at lessons learned from those as we do them. So. Mayor has also mentioned before the concern about how the construction goes about. This will all be a KYTC plan, Mayor, that will be managed. Concerns about receptions on 29th Street and that construction. As our Steve points out, Steve Cole, it's a 2-lane, very limited down there. This is a current 4-lane plus the curves, so the traffic management plan would be very well thought out as part of the final plan to have the least impact on businesses and also our citizens. There's a lot more room. You could shift traffic to one side, work on the other, because you can shift traffic over to the 2 lanes, and there's a lot more flexibility here than what you had down there.
So speaking of time, how long does it take? Do you project that it would take to complete this from start to finish?
I knew somebody was going to ask.
If she didn't, I was gonna.
I envision it being 1 construction season. So, I mean, construction season is typically March to October, November timeframe. each one of the roundabouts is usually, I mean, what we've seen is that you can do those in 45 to 60 days easy. So doing multiple of them at a time, you know, it'll take a little bit longer, but I still feel that you would be less than 6 months. I mean, of impact. That's my personal opinion. I mean, the contractor may get done quicker than that, but there's not a lot of there's not excavation. I mean, you're just redoing the curbs and you're doing some sidewalks. You know, the streetscaping elements is something that is part of that also, and there's a time for that because you can't just tear all the sidewalk out in front of a business where they have no access. You have to kind of do this part and then do that part. But I feel very strongly that you could do it in one construction season for sure.
And one other element of that also is utilities, and Steve, Mr. Cole are both looking at the current water lines we have down there. Remember, we took the opportunity on 29th to replace those lines that are brand new now. We really statistically don't have a large issue downtown on Winchester. We have had a couple of cracks since I've been here. So that'll be another part of our analysis is something we did, unintended, deep
Yeah.
dive to.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I will say that we will definitely do as part of this is to coordinate with the other utility companies so that 30 days after we get this thing open and built that something doesn't happen. So, I mean, there's always things that are out of your control, but at least coordinate with those folks and make sure if there is some repair that they have in the next little bit that we go ahead and get that done now.
Very good, thank you. Any questions, commissioners?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I do. Not so much questions, but clarifications.
Grab your mic. Grab your mic.
Oh. So the level of service number, and I think we talked about this before, that's an important metric to me to show that effectively it's the metric to show that flow is going, the service through the area is going to be good or bad, I guess. And so when people look at this presentation and those ABCDs, that's what that means. So, you know, going through this from the safety aspect, the flow, traffic flow, that's the part of it for me. Back-in parking. So in manufacturing, we've had back-in parking for a long time for safety reasons. You pretty much hit on everything for the back-in parking, why cities do it. And by the way, on all of this, and I'm going to talk about this more, but look around. If you're looking for other examples, they're out there. Roger Brooks, we've learned about other examples, but a quick Google search will tell you what other cities are doing around the country and why they're doing it. And you can also see the success that they've had after they've done it. Pedestrian crossing. So pedestrian crosses roundabout, they're just going to wait and then cross, essentially, right?
Yes, so with the roundabouts, at a signal, you know, you have cars that stop. With a roundabout, you know, cars are continuously flowing. They're pulled back a little bit away from the intersection, but you don't have to cross. With a signalized intersection, you have to cross both lanes. With a roundabout, you have the island in the middle that you can cross one and then cross the other. So it's a two-step process. You're only going half as far that you have to go. And those islands are raised so that the pedestrians feel protected, but
Yeah.
yes.
And to reiterate the fact that the simulations you showed, you measured that data. I mean, that's literally, and something I know I'm repeating myself, but that's so important to me because we're looking at even a scaled up version of what our traffic would look like in this scenario. Extremely important to me. So that's that part of it. So now we've been learning for almost 2 years now what this would do for our businesses and for our atmosphere and our culture downtown. So that's the part of it. And if you listen to any kind of downtown expert, that's why these cities are doing this. And we just talked to some yesterday, actually, and one of their first questions was asking about this, and we were like, come to our meeting tomorrow. So that part of it, we've learned for almost 2 years now why you do this from a business standpoint and a walkability standpoint and all those factors. So for me, framing the issue of traffic flow and safety, which you've done an excellent job of, thank you for doing this today, and then also the business, the whole reason for Destination Ashland is what this reinforces. So for me, framing it in those two contexts is very important. Thanks.
So I'd like to ask Mr. Gracie, at some point, we'll be able to have this up on our website. And the other point is, do we have a plan yet for public meetings, for public input on this?
That will actually be, we can absolutely put that on the website. I don't think there's any problems with that from a proprietary standpoint. And part of the final design will include public hearings.
Good.
Absolutely.
All righty. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Yay.